Icy River. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 20th, 2020 meeting of the Delaware County Board of Commissioners. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. I'm Jeff Benton, President of the Board. To my right is Vice President Gary Merrill, and to his right is our Administrator Mike Fromer. To my left is fellow Commissioner Barbara Lewis, and our clerk today is Sarah DeNova. We can begin. We got a full agenda today. We got a lot going on.
Resolution number 20-164, in the matter of approving the electronic record of proceedings from regular meeting held February 13th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 20-164. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
We have no public comment this morning. Resolution number 20-165, in the matter of approving purchase orders, then and now certificates and payments of warrants in batch numbers CMA PR 0219, member transfers in batch numbers MTA PR 0219, and procurement card payments in batch numbers PCA 0219.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 20-165. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-166, in the matter of accepting and approving the Delaware County Sheriff's Office Transport Report for the months of December 2019 and January 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 20-166. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-167, in the matter of approving travel expense requests.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 20-167. Mr. Merrill? Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-168, in the matter of approving a supplemental appropriation for the Delaware County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Good morning, Commissioners. Sean Miller, Director, Delaware County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. This supplemental appropriations would enable us to enact an emergency operations center update. A lot of the furniture there is approaching 20 years old, and this project would entail new furniture, new desks and chairs specifically, that would make the room far more versatile. And what I mean by that is it would enable us to switchly change from a meeting format or a classroom format to an emergency operations center or incident command system format. And this would enable us to host more trainings down there for public safety, as well as being more conducive to meetings. And so, for example, EMS meets down there on a regular basis. The furniture would be more conducive to such meetings, and the technology would also be much more conducive to such meetings. We've been working very closely on this project, as Cody here with our office can attest, with facilities and data on this project. And one of the particular items that I'm most happy about is an example of cost savings. And so Ron Clayton from Data has been working very closely with us on this. And one of our concerns with the project was having to purchase more updated and current audiovisual control systems. And that was going to be a very large percentage of the project as far as the overall cost. However, we have been able to completely circumvent that through the use of smart TVs. And that was one of the recommendations that Ron Clayton of Data had. So that represents a tremendous cost savings in the project. But these days, an emergency operations center has so many different feeds of data coming in. If you look at the Department of Transportation cameras, as well as computer-aided dispatch, so that we can maintain situational awareness as we work with Delcom and our other public safety partners. There are all of these data feeds coming in, and we found that our current capacity is insufficient to accommodate them. And so this project would really bring the Emergency Operations Center up to speed for 2020 for activations or staffing for pre-planned events, but also it would be very versatile for meetings, the day-to-day sorts of things that happen with a great deal of frequency. As far as the funding, we're not requesting funding from the Board of Commissioners for this project. It is a cross between our existing emergency management budget as well as our unappropriated cash on hand, which is where this supplemental appropriations comes into play. And so with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Just a comment. I'm on the Emergency Management Board, and we were presented 3 alternatives. Actually, we settled for this alternative. It's kind of a hybrid. There was one alternative that was a little bit more expensive. We took one thing from that and then incorporated it into the medium alternative, and that was our recommendation. I'm surprised, actually, that the figure is this low for what we're getting. The furniture, the TV, I mean, several different things, but we definitely need to update it.
Yes, ma'am. I think that was one of the things that the EMA board felt fairly strongly about. As an example, with the furniture being more conducive to meetings and that sort of thing, we've identified an issue with law enforcement that the existing chairs are not conducive to sitting in with a duty belt on. And so law enforcement, they carry so many things these days on their duty belts, and the armrests really get in the way of their duty belts. So some of the chairs that we're looking at would not have armrests, and so would be much more comfortable for them to sit in for an extended period of time. So we're trying to make the room as useful as possible for our partners for trainings, meetings, and actual activations as well.
We are proposing to take, I think, what, 16,000, or yeah, almost 16,000 supplemental appropriation. How much, what is the balance in that fund that those funds would come from?
Currently, we have about $300,000 in cash on hand, and based off of current projections, we would have, assuming that all of the grants that we have, projected to receive this year, and all of our expenditures follow the budget, then we would have approximately, give or take a little bit, $200,000 on hand. And one of the reasons why we do that is we try to keep approximately 2/3 to 75% of our annual budget on hand at any given time because of our office's heavy reliance on federal grants. And sometimes those grants have been held up in Congress, and so those grant payouts to our office could theoretically be hung up. And that's one of the things that we have worked on with the auditor's office previously, is and working with Jane Tinker previously, she felt that 2/3 to 75% would be an appropriate target for us to maintain on hand. So we would still be right within that target range of approximately 2/3 of our budget.
All right, vote.
Vote on motion 20-168. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-169, in the matter of authorizing the use of a procurement card for the Emergency Management Office.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
This is an update to reflect a change in personnel. As you know, Bob Lavender retired back in August of last year, and Scott Stewart has joined us as well. And so his name would now be on the P card. The funding, or the daily limits, the monthly limits, et cetera, those have not changed. So essentially, it's just the name changing, but the spending limits remain unchanged.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 20-169. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Now we have a presentation from Mr. Miller.
This is very similar to what we discussed in previous years, but I think it's worth bringing up from time to time because it highlights what the commissioner's authorities are in disasters. And so this is one of the things that Eric Hochstetler has looked at with the authorities. And so I'll pass out a couple other things that I don't believe you have in front of you. But I like history very much, and so what I've done is I pulled the commissioner's resolution back from 2008. And you may recall Hurricane Ike that came through in
Oh, yeah.
September of
Yes.
that year.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is our last locally declared disaster for Delaware County. So that means we've been very fortunate over the past 11 and a half odd years. But when you think about the disaster authorities of commissioners, the one that comes first and foremost in many folks' minds is that of declaring a disaster. And that does a couple different things. Number one, it is a sign that local resources are exhausted. And what that could entail would be firefighting resources, law enforcement resources, medical supplies, sandbags, things of that nature, anything that you could imagine that might be needed in the face of a disaster. So number one, it's a signal, especially to the state of Ohio, that our local resources are exhausted or overwhelmed. It's also a statement that the incident is serious. And so if you look through the language there back from the 2008 resolution, it talks about public offices and employees hereby directed to exercise the utmost diligence in the discharge of their duties, and also all citizens are called upon and directed to comply with necessary emergency measures. So it's really a signal that whatever the incident is very serious, that county government takes it seriously, public safety workers should take it seriously, and so too should the public. Additionally, it changes the bidding threshold and alleviates some of those requirements, and it also would alleviate the need for the lengthy notice of the public meeting. So for example, it reduces the media notification for emergency meetings, and it says that persons calling the meeting shall immediately alert the media requesting such notifications of the time, place, and purpose of the meeting. So that pre-notice meeting requirement, I think of 24 hours, is waived for such emergency meetings as well. And so that is kind of the overview for declaring a local disaster. And kind of the other thing that it would do too is, as I mentioned, it's a signal to Ohio Emergency Management that those local resources are overwhelmed. That's one of the things that they would look to local emergency management and ask, has your county declared? Now that's not to say that we could not get some state resources prior to the disaster declaration. That is no longer a hard and fast rule so much as it once was. But once it is declared, that really helps with getting the ball moving in those state resources coming in. So those are kind of the highlights for disaster declaration. A couple of other things that are attributed to boards of commissioners: conducting shelter operations and contributing to that function. These days, that would primarily be carried out through our nonprofit partners. And again, looking back historically, we have worked with the American Red Cross to conduct such operations in coordination with other nonprofits such as the Delaware YMCA and faith-based organizations, local congregations too. So some of the historic sheltering or warming center operations that we've done: back in 2011, there was a very impactful ice storm, and we had, I think, 30 or 40 residents at a Red Cross shelter. 2012 marked the derecho in June, a very large windstorm, although not to the same extent as Hurricane Ike. The winter of 2013 and 14, we had extreme cold and opened a warming center through the Red Cross in one of the local churches. So those are some of the highlights. None of those got to the point where commissioner assistance was needed. But if this were something that was a very prolonged kind of event, if we're talking, half a week or more, then there could be some need for assistance. But that would be, I think, the exception rather than the rule. Probably would not happen very often. Mass feeding is another function that's associated with commissioners too, or at least supporting those efforts. And again, these days, I think that would be primarily through our nonprofit partners. And again, going back to a local Delaware County example, back in 2008, following the Ike windstorm, the Salvation Army did provide some mass feeding in Sunbury. So there's not been a tremendous need as of late for that. And even with that example, which was a pretty extreme example, there was no need for commissioner funding with that. But again, it could theoretically be possible. And then, of course, resource control, as the county, handles resources on a day-to-day basis anyway. And then also enacting a curfew for minors. And so those are some of the highlights of disaster declaration and also some of the authorities that commissioners have in a disaster. And if another, Hurricane Ike came through, we would ensure that the local details that the first responders were seeing would be funneled up through the county administrator to the Board of Commissioners to ensure that you were all briefed appropriately on what was going on, and that if resources were needed, we would work collaboratively on that. But with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. And I know it's kind of a lot of ground in a short period of time, but it's one of those things that I think is worth discussing from time to time.
One thing I'll add is that after I became a commissioner, I wanted to know what our obligations were
Sure.
in the case of an emergency. And so Director Miller went over what they were with me. And then from time to time, we discussed, mass feedings. I thought, well, who's going to do that? I could just see the three of us trying to do that.
You're cooking, Will.
Yeah, am I cooking? And
Serve.
yeah, he'll serve. Yeah, that. So anyway, Sean has reached out to a lot of the local organizations and just to make sure that the support is there. And we've talked about this from time to time too. And I am feel confident that that support will be there, and it has been, whenever we've needed it.
Right.
So.
And the other thing, too, in addition to our nonprofit partners, the state of Ohio is a resource-rich state. And so within 48 hours, 72 hours, we could have a lot of state resources here if the situation warranted it, as well as federal resources. Going back to the 2012 derecho as an example of state resources, the Franklin County Emergency Management Agency had the National Guard actually going door to door doing wellness checks because of the extreme heat that followed the power outages which resulted from that storm. So we have a great National Guard asset here in Ohio, and we have a National Guard liaison as well for Delaware County. And in addition to that, Ohio Department of Transportation has a tremendous amount of assets, and Ohio Emergency Management has been a great partner in making sure that counties have the assets that they need. So I'm very comfortable with our communication with Ohio Emergency Management, as well as their support of counties in the state of Ohio.
I have no question, just a comment. I always leave here reassured when you speak, as these issues come up unexpectedly, and you always leave me with the feeling that it's in good hands and that you're going to lead us through whatever we can't anticipate. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And we'll be coming into Severe Weather Awareness Month in March. And so we'll probably be working with the commissioners on that, maybe have some kind of awareness recognition, because preparedness for severe weather is very important. As you said, sir, these things come up sometimes very unexpectedly. So I appreciate that, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Yeah, we all really appreciate the effort you do. It's very important. It's something that you don't need very often, thankfully, but it's very important to be prepared, and you and your team do a nice job working very well with the other jurisdictions and the other organizations in Central Ohio and Delaware County that the coordination is so important, as well as keeping us up to date and making sure we're current on the procedures and responsibilities, et cetera. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and sometimes I feel kind of bad because it seems like the severe weather emails or the winter weather emails that we send out as a notification, they always seem to happen on a Friday afternoon. So it's kind of being the bearer of bad news for the weekend. But thank you again. Appreciate it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Resolution number 20-170, in the matter of approving the amendment number 2 to the professional services agreement with M&A Architects for the renovation of the Bixby campus for county facilities.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, John Melvin, Director of Facilities. This amendment number 2 for M&A's contract will cover programming and site development, conceptual design for a social services aspect out at the Bixby campus, as well as a couple additional fees for a couple of their sub-consultants for the landscape and site design and the current construction documents, as well as adding some technology, additional technology sub-consulting work too for the current construction documents.
Yeah, I had a question of, presumably the county would incur these additional costs, but the agencies that would form the social services campus would reimburse us
Yeah, I've
as
talked to
the time approaches.
Administrator Frommer on that, yes. This is really, and again, this is the first steps into that, just something the program needs, basically putting some size, scale to, and then developing the site. So this would be the first step of that, and once we get this developed and shaken out, yeah, definitely, we'll be looking for cost sharing on these fees.
Okay. Any questions? All right, vote.
Vote on motion 20-170. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-171, in the matter of authorizing the use of county credit cards for motor vehicle expenses.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
This is a little bit of a housekeeping. The EMS department had worked with Brad Lutz to establish fleet cards for the EMS department for their squads, and going back and doing research on that, working with Mr. Hosteller. The last time we did a credit card resolution, I think was 2004 or 2005. We had resolutions for both fuel cards and also the second resolution for long-distance calling cards. This is clean it up to basically update the names as listed for the emergency, for EMS, and delete some other offices that were listed in that fuel card resolution that don't have fuel cards, and completely rescind the long-distance calling card resolution.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 20-171. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-172, in the matter of approving the sanitary sewer subdivider agreements for River Bluff Phase 1, Scioto Meadows North, and Scioto Meadows South.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kelly Thiel with the Sanitary Engineer's Office. These agreements are all standard with the subdividers and have been reviewed by legal counsel, and our office is recommending their approval.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 20-172. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-173, in the matter of approving the sanitary sewer improvement plans for Liberty Grand Communities Sections 1, Phases A, B, and C.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So this is a sanitary engineering plan that was reviewed by staff, and having been found to meet our standards and specifications, we are recommending its approval at this time.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 20-173. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-174, in the matter of accepting sanitary sewer improvements for North Lake Preserve, Section 1.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
These sewers are constructed and have been tested and found to be complete to our satisfaction, and we're recommending their acceptance at this time.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 20-174. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-175, in the matter of waiving the Delaware County portion of tipping fees at the solid waste transfer station to support 2020 litter control campaigns.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
This is a request that we received from the General Health District in support of litter control campaigns, including the Olentangy watershed cleanup and the Scioto River sweep that will happen later on this summer. And
I think we do the same,
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
recall.
yes,
I mentioned that this is our typical process, and appreciate the Health District's initiative to help keep our rivers and waterways clean. Vote.
Vote on motion 20-175. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-176, in the matter of approving a congested area flight plan letter in support of proposed Ohio Department of aircraft operations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Hostetler, any comments?
Yes, this is the issue that we discussed, I believe it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I redrafted a letter to meet what the board had wanted to do instead of the form letter that was sent to us, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that draft.
I think your redraft kind of clarifies and makes it clear to the constituents. I appreciate it very much.
Okay. All right, vote.
Vote on motion 20-176. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
We still have 4 more minutes.
Okay.
4 more minutes.
We got through that agenda, but we can do
We can
administrative
get through
reports.
mine real quick. I don't have anything to report.
Commissioner Merrill, any comments?
No, real quick, I'm not sure I'll take 3 minutes, but attended a Corsa board meeting last week, which was my first Corsa meeting, and we discussed the agreement to get CCAO and Corsa back going in the same direction, and a lengthy meeting, but it got a good result, I believe, and CCAO will be voting on that tomorrow, and ultimately have to go through the Corsa general membership next month, but the signs look positive, and I only hesitate because there's a lot of people involved, but I think we'll ultimately get a good result and get that issue behind us and get everybody going in the same direction. I feel like I'll be stealing your thunder, but I'll just say Commissioner Ben and I attended the Hayes Birthplace Marker ceremony at 12:15 Monday, President's Day, and I thought that went very well. And I'll lead in.
Yeah, Commissioner Lewis, any comments before I dive in? I was going to add on to that, but
Well, I saw your picture on the front page of the Gazette, and I left.
my back.
Your back, that's right, yeah. So I left it on your chair.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's my report.
My mom will thank you. She'll probably clip it out and put it on the refrigerator. So, anyway, just kind of continue on that. Delaware City, is fortunate to have a native son, 19th President of the United States, born right here and right where that marker was. And unfortunately, the house was torn down in 1926. But we have, thanks to Bill Reetz's leadership with his committee, we have done a really nice job of finally recognizing his birth with the statue at the corner of William and Sandusky, and then this new marker. So,
And they also had the name below, over there by the statue, which wasn't there before.
yes,
so
they added on
also
both of the brick facades.
Which looks nice.
Really, really added a lot. So it's a very nice tribute and a nice marker and so on. Again, thanks to Bill Reitz for his leadership and all the people who donated. Obviously, the county contributed through the Community Enhancement Grant Program to make this happen. But there were a lot of people that worked very hard to get this done, and it's just a nice
It happened
tribute.
pretty quickly, too. I mean, the
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah, a little over a year.
A little over a year.
Put it together and got the statue built and everything. And I'm reading his biography. Ari Hugenboom wrote a very long biography about Rutherford B. Hayes. He's a fascinating guy. He is just a remarkable person.
Yes.
Governor, congressman, obviously the president, and military hero. He was a general in the Civil War and got wounded 5 times in various battles. I mean, he just an incredible leader, and just a really good citizen, very good representative of Delaware County. So with that, actually a couple other things. Got the state of the county. I think it's next Thursday.
Tuesday.
Just trying to see if Jane would react. Yeah, it is next Tuesday. 8 o'clock at the zoo is the breakfast, 9 o'clock is the program. Going to be a really good one. We got a lot of good stuff, good videos put together, so I would encourage everyone who can make it to make it. Chamber lunch is today. Bill Lafayette is talking about the region's economic future. Central Youth Center meeting is later today. And we do have, and it is 10 o'clock, so we can do our hearing today at 10, and then at 1 o'clock we have a viewing for a ditch petition. So after this hearing, I think we'll go into executive session, then reconvene, and we'll figure it out. So if you could proceed with the opening the,
Just so you want to call people, anyway, Paul's taking care of it.
yeah, there we go.
And since I live in that neighborhood,
Yes, I
I
think-
will recuse myself from discussion.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
see you later.
All right. Don't go far.
Okay. Do you want to open it or to wait for all the noise?
Yeah, why don't we wait till everybody gets settled?
And we have some other people joining us.
Do we? Yeah, there's quite a few people.
I thought this was a pretty small neighborhood. Is this everybody?
Good.
Quite a few houses, 'cause
They're kind of hid, aren't they, off the
Yeah,
road?
yeah, there are a lot of narrow roads that wind their way back.
I don't have any idea how many, but I guess 50 or 60 homes, if I had to guess, I'm guessing. I don't really know.
The zoo animals are what's, the baby zoo animals is what's getting the attendance driven up.
Okay, I think we'll get moving on the hearing then. With that, we'll turn it over to Sarah to walk us through the process, or the resolutions we need.
Resolution number 20-177, public hearing for consideration of a petition from the Lake of the Woods Water Company requesting dedication of a 3.136 acre segment of Duncan Glen Drive as a public right-of-way.
So moved?
Second, any discussion? Vote.
Vote on motion 20-177. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis has recused herself. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 20-178, in the matter of approving for a specific occurrence, a suspension of Rule 3, speaker registration, Rule 4, limitations, and Rule 7, public comment procedure from the rules governing public comment before the Board of County Commissioners of Delaware County, Ohio.
So moved.
Second, any discussion? Vote.
Vote on motion 20-178. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye. All right, the hearing is now open. It is Thursday, February 20th, as we had mentioned. I will review what will happen today at today's hearing, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments. I'd like to welcome everyone to the hearing for the consideration of the proposed dedication of a 3.136 acre segment of Duncan's Glen Drive as a public right-of-way. There is a sign-in sheet circulating. I would respectfully ask everyone to sign it, please, if you would, please. We will hear from the county engineer and take questions from the board. Then we will hear from all those in favor of the proposed dedication. Then we will hear from all those opposed to the proposed dedication. And during your testimony, I will ask you to take an oath. We'll continue back and forth. New information comes up where additional people wish to speak. We will take questions from the board continuing, and then at that point, we will close the hearing. So that's the process we will go through today. With that, I will turn it over to our county engineer's office to go through their report.
Okay, good morning. My name is Rob Riley, Chief Deputy Engineer with the County Engineer's Office. The County Engineer's Office submitted a report on the proposed petition last week. I'm going to just briefly summarize this petition rather than reading it in its entirety. If you do have any questions, please feel free to do that, ask those questions. The petition was filed in November by the Lake of the Woods Water Company in accordance with a section of code that provides for this basically establishments of new public roads. The Duncan's Glen Drive is approximately 2,350 feet long, starts at Red Bank Road and terminates near Robin Hood Circle. We have, pursuant to the petition, we have done a field inspection looking at the condition and the all of the geometric criteria that would need to be met in order to establish the road as a public road and meet the current roadway standards. Those findings are itemized in the report. There are several, I would call them minor items, and then there are a few major items. The most significant items are the resurfacing and paving of the street, which would account for approximately half the cost. The other items include removal of certain obstructions. We did include a contingency for unknown items, such as replacing portions of culverts, storm sewers, and then basically upgrading all of the signage to meet current public road standards. The estimated cost for this work at this point, we have done an estimate and have assigned an amount of $135,000 to do the proposed work. I would say that that is a very preliminary estimate because we have not done a detailed inspection of the underground drainage features, the storm sewers and the culverts. We would need to do an actual inspection, probably a video camera inspection, to get a better sense of if there are any issues that would require more significant repairs. But we feel reasonably certain that the cost would be in that ballpark of $135,000. And then we have outlined 3 different options by which the improvements could be made, and I'll summarize those. Option 1 would be for the homeowners to perform the work basically by private contract, hire a contractor to perform all these items of work, and then the work would actually be inspected by the county engineer's office during that process. And then at the time the work is completed, we could then reconvene this hearing and then act on the petition to accept the road at that point. The second option would be having the work done by the county. There is a formal process in the law to provide for that. The reason to do that would be in the event that there aren't enough assets, or the homeowners would prefer to have a special assessment placed on the properties to help pay for the work. And so basically in order to do that, the project then has to become a public contract. That does lead to potentially higher costs, though that's not certain in today's bidding environment, but we would expect that process will take several months to get through. And then basically the cost would be apportioned to the benefiting property owners in terms of, there's several different formulas we can use. We have not gone into any detail as to what formula would be used to calculate the apportionment of those assessments, but it's fair to say the abutting properties would be benefited the most. The other properties in the subdivision that do use that road to access their properties would also benefit. But again, we have not made any attempt or gone through any preliminary apportionment of that cost. And then the third option is kind of a variation of the second option. The Delaware County Transportation Improvement District is an entity that has the ability to do essentially the same function as the county commissioners in levying a special assessment on private properties, performing the work. The difference is that the TID is not necessarily subject to prevailing wage requirements, and then there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of the type of agreement that can be done in making the improvements. So the end result would be potentially a lower cost, but that's not certain in today's bidding environment. The difference between prevailing wage and non-prevailing wage work isn't necessarily as pronounced, so it's debatable whether there would be any significant cost savings. So that said, we have identified those 3 options. We are recommending, it is our opinion that the first option, which would be the private contract by the homeowners directly, would be the most economical and frankly offer the most flexibility to the homeowners. We understand that the cost would be significant, and something we need to discuss today is what assets the former water company, the owners have available to put into this project, and what additional assets would be needed. So with that, that's all I have for the report. I'd be glad to take any questions you may have.
A couple of questions.
Go ahead.
The main question I have, and it's more, and I'm not the engineer, and you don't mention it, so I assume it's not an issue, but for the record, the road base is in good order apparently, because you talk about adding a layer, you don't talk about any work on the base as I read it.
Yeah, so the The base is generally in good condition. There may be some locations that need repaired, but that cost would be relatively minor compared to the cost of the 2-inch asphalt overlay, which we are specifying.
And second question, we are coordinating and working with the township.
We certainly would. The township would be involved in any inspection because ultimately the road would be taken over by the township as a township road.
The water company still exists, as I understand it, but Delco runs the water plant now. So how would the water company, if it's inactive, if you will, or not, it still exists but inactive, how would that work?
And I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, but my understanding is that in the court proceeding several years ago, the assets of the water company were dissolved in essence and distributed to the property owners. So I'm not sure what contracting abilities the water company still has to do the sort of work we're talking about, or whether it needs to be an association of the homeowners. So that's something maybe we can find out today from testimony.
Okay. How many residences are there in the subdivision?
I don't have that number handy, and we can certainly get that number.
Could you just briefly describe what the TID is? I think it would be helpful if you could just say, what its role is and who does it and so on.
Yeah, the Delaware County Transportation Improvement District is in essence, a separate governmental unit. It was created by the county commissioners, and the primary mission of the TID is to take on transportation improvements. Basically, the law provides for the creation of a TID to use more innovative and some different options that counties and townships do not have in terms of contracting. So the TID acts somewhat like a private corporation, somewhat like a governmental agency, but it is governed by a separate board of trustees, 7 members, 5 members voting, 2 non-voting members that meet on a monthly basis. There has been and will continue to be a strong relationship between the Board of Commissioners and the TID. So if there is a desire to utilize the TID towards this project, I'm sure those discussions could take place. But as I mentioned earlier, we don't know that there would be any significant benefit at this cost level versus the other options, but that's something we can certainly discuss.
And just for your information, the county administrator, the county engineer, 2 citizens, and then the deputy auditor are all members of that 5 voting members, and then Representative Brenner, or Senator Brenner and Representative Carfani are the 2 non-voting members. So, and they're becoming very active. We formed it maybe a year and a half ago, and they're getting some projects going, so it's a good organization to work with. Okay, that is it for questions.
I do have just a question of clarity. The recommendation you're making is option 1, which I understand, and you're also suggesting after we're hearing today that maybe a continuation. So a question I have for Eric. Eric, if we were to make a decision to continue, do we choose the option today, or is that held in abeyance until the hearing were to be continued?
Until you decide whether you're going to accept this, which would be the threshold question, I don't see how you can make a decision as to how you're actually going to.
Okay, just wanted to clarify so we were on the same page. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Okay, next we will hear from all those who are interested in speaking. You don't have to, but are interested in speaking in favor of the proposed dedication. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Lewis.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jim Lewis, 9230 White Oak Lane, Genoa Township. I'm wearing 2 or 3.
Swear you in.
Oh, yep.
We have to go through this. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, thank you.
Okay.
And I'm going to make a wager he could answer your question about the number of houses out there. So.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Well,
I assume you know.
That's the first question I can't answer. I would say you're probably talking about 200, thereabouts.
Okay.
If I may, I'd like to give you a little history, and I think Commissioner Benton, your question about the background and the water company. I'm wearing a couple hats. First of all, I'm president of Homeowners Association number 4, the 4 HOAs or subdivisions that are immediately affected by the road. I'm also a member of the Road Committee, which is the operational arm of the water company that manages the road. Back in the 1950s, when Lake of the Woods was originally founded, the first settlers, which included a 12-year-old person who was going to become a commissioner, had to access all of this property by boat. There weren't any roads, there wasn't any water service, and over time, the community developed in a rather haphazard way, and they formed their own water company. And when Delco Water took that over, the water company the members voted to dissolve the water company and dispose of all of its assets, water tower, pumps, and the like. And all of that went pretty well, except when they discovered at the end that there was one remaining asset, and that is this little segment of Duncan's Glen. And a 6-year epic struggle over the ownership of the road, whether it should remain private or be publicly dedicated ensued, and all of that was settled last September by Judge Gormley in case number 14 CVH 050388, and that court decision was appended to the petition that's been filed. That court decision made clear that the water company has sole and exclusive title to the segment. It's unencumbered, and it's the water company's desire to have this publicly dedicated. I might mention that we have representatives from all parts of the neighborhood, but among them we've got Jim Adams, who is a member of the water company board, asked me to speak on the board's behalf. We appreciate all of the help and the support we've gotten from the Delaware County engineer. They've just been great. The recommendations they made make a lot of sense to us. The first option that they have proposed is the one that we're going to achieve, hopefully. We have about $90,000 collected, and we have an assessment out that's being collected right now. We think we'll have enough money to get this done without any special assessments of the residents or going through the other procedures that the engineer outlined. So what we'd like the commissioners to do is to continue your decision to a later date, say in late September or maybe in October, by which time we hope to have this work done. And we will not ask you to publicly dedicate this road unless and until it meets the engineer's approval. I might also add that we've worked very closely with Genoa Township. We've kept them informed about what we're doing. They have all of the information that the engineer's office has. We'd like to thank Genoa Township as well for being cooperative in our efforts. With that having been said, are there any questions I might answer on behalf of the water company board?
Answer my questions with your
Yeah,
comments.
it's been helpful. Appreciate the stating your recommendation. You know, that's very helpful to us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, others who want to speak in favor of the petition? Again, don't have to. Okay, last chance. We're going to move on to open the floor or the microphone to those who would like to speak in opposition of the petition. Anyone who, again, don't have to, but anyone who wants to speak in opposition. Got a lot of interested parties here today. It's great to see everybody show up. Again, you've got a beautiful neighborhood, and clearly the road needs some work, but that's part of what we're trying to do.
Commissioner Benton, it'd be my recommendation that we ask reading the resolution to continue the hearing to a date certain. I'm sorry?
We need to close it first.
Yeah, have to close it.
No, you don't want to close it.
That's my bad.
Yep.
We're correct.
My heart skipped a beat.
Yeah.
Resolution number 20-179, in the matter of continuing the public hearing for consideration of petition from Lake of the Woods Water Company requesting the dedication of a 3.136 acre segment of Duncan's Glen Drive as a public right-of-way to, and I do have some dates, if you want to pull out your calendars.
Okay.
I heard a recommendation of September, October. Those are
Yeah,
the dates you're
that
working
sounds like
from?
that's what. Late September or October.
I have a October 29th date.
We have a commission, that's a commission meeting day. I don't have anything else on the calendar that day. Does that work for Mr. Lewis? Engineer, any issues with that date?
We wouldn't want to hold the hearing any later than that, just going into winter maintenance season. It would be good to have this all wrapped up.
And that is not a good date for me.
That is not.
Oh. Well,
How about August 27th? That's
I have
6
to go
months.
back that early?
yeah, that isn't going to work. You won't be able to have the work done. It's got to be late September or October, right? That's what we're targeting.
Let's try
22nd, 15th,
September?
October,
Oh, October.
8th.
The 20,
Those all work for me.
22nd, is that a date you mentioned?
Yeah,
or-
that works for me.
That works for me.
Okay. October 27th, or 22nd of 2020.
Engineer's office, Mr. Lewis, be okay? Okay, let's target October 22nd then.
And for the record, we will say that we are going to give two different, if I'm not mistaken, two different addresses for that. The Commissioner's office will be either
Oh, that's right.
still located here at 101, or we may have moved to 91, which is
Yeah.
directly next door.
For those of you who don't know, we're renovating the building next door, the old courthouse, and the Commissioner's office and a number of other offices are going to move over there, and it's scheduled for June, July timeframe. So hopefully,
Yes.
we'll be in by October.
Better be over there.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a big
Just a short walk
disappointment.
from where you are now, so.
Just right next door.
All right, so to reiterate, we're going to continue the hearing until October 22nd, 2020. And I have a motion made by,
Commissioner Merrill, I will second that.
okay. Vote on motion 20-179. Sorry. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Okay, so this hearing is officially continued until October 22nd, 2020. Eric, comment?
What was the time?
Oh, my apologies. We'll say 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, that would work. It's a session day, so that would
Do we have to redo the motion since it was included? Okay, just want to make sure before we get out of here.
All right, so again, thanks everyone for coming and organizing this. October 22nd, 2020 at 10 o'clock in the morning, either here or hopefully in that building next door. We will resume this hearing. So again, thanks everyone.
And thank you for your attendance.
Yeah. Okay.
Better be next door, or,
Yeah, or Melvin's in trouble.
yeah.
He's not here.
Melvin's in
Yeah,
trouble.
We'll go ahead and do the exec, we don't have to have Barb come back for that.
Yeah, that's true. We'll grab it.
I come in. Now.
No, we'll wait. Let him clear out.
What do I?
Supposed to be striper fishing with my brother in Oklahoma that day.
29th?
Yeah, 29th.
We don't want to get in the way of fishing.
And I don't think she knew that. I don't think I'd share that with her yet. I'll be in Oklahoma fishing with my brother.
Ah, that'd be fun.
Ice chunks in the river.
Lake Texas, striper fishing is a real big deal.
I can't believe you're out there standing in icy water fishing.
You know, I'm starting to wonder about it as well.
Joe, how are you?
It'd be easier just to come work for the day.
Hey, Rob. Right in the lobby. We need to continue the meeting. Thanks, Paul.
Right. Resolution number 20-180, in the matter of adjourning into executive session for consideration of employment, compensation of a public employee or public official, to consider this purchase of property for public purposes, to consider the sale of property at competitive bidding for collective bargaining.
So moved.
Second, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 20-180. Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in executive session.
Yeah, all along Lake
We're back at 1, right?
Yep.
Resolution number 20-181, in the matter of adjourning out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 20-181. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
All right,
We have another
we are
item
in
of
recess,
business.
right?
Wait, no, we
Oh,
have.
that's right, sorry. Yep, yep.
We have one other item of business. Resolution number 20-182, in the matter of approving the collective bargaining agreement between the Delaware County Board of Commissioners, the Delaware County Job and Family Services, and American Federation of State, Local, and Municipal Employees, Ohio Council 8 AFL-CIO.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 20-182. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye. Okay,
Now,
that's it for business. Now we're going to go into recess until the 1 o'clock
viewing.
here. Viewing, that's right.
It is here, though, so,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going
See
to
you guys
have
at
the viewing
1
here. Okay, so we are in recess.
Okay. All right. I've got to be on.